Hi, my name is Matt Perez. I'm here in rHatchery.live, and Jose is in Portugal, so he will not be joining us today. And we have Leo, which is, there he is. Um,
How you doing?
he's our guest today, and we did a little bit of chatting in the background, and it seems like we're aligned in a lot of things. And and that's that. So ask your questions on the chat, and I'll try to translate them here. And by all means, read the book. Yeah, I pressed right hand, the correct hand. And the book is called Radical Companies Without Bosses or Employees. And I'll let you find out what that is. So, Leo, welcome to the show, and tell us about your what you do in for the earth and stuff like that.
Hi Matt, and thanks for having me on. It's a real treat to be here from the other side of the Atlantic and the States. I started this company, EdenLab, last year, but I've been harboring it for a long time. You know, when you have an idea in your mind or in your heart, and you know you need to do it.
Yep.
And I just could see that there was an opportunity to think differently about how we handle the challenge of climate change, and or some people call it climate breakdown, and how we might speed up the process of reacting to it, adapting to it, preventing it, reducing it. And I could just see a gap. I could just see a gap. And I can tell you the story if you like of where I came from. I
Yeah,
mean, it might be
please,
worth saying,
please,
but
please.
like I'd been in marketing and advertising for a long time. Because when I was young, it looked cool and it was fun, and we made videos and music, and it seemed like a fun thing to do. But slowly, I guess, over that period of time, and it was a long time, like decades, I began to become, particularly more recently, much more aware of what was happening in our world around us. And I would look in my kids' eyes and kind of question whether what I was doing with my talents or whatever, such as they are, was really, you know, doing enough good and valuable enough and helpful enough to the world and my kids. And I was working. Go on, you want to jump in?
No.
No, no, and I was working in it was a particular moment. I was working on a project for a big food company, big American-owned food company, like it's in everyone's kitchens, and we were helping them tell their sustainability story. And this wasn't greenwash. This wasn't saying things that weren't true. And we'd been really careful, and we'd done a really careful audit, and we got specialist help, and we were really clear that we weren't lying about what they were doing. But as I finished that project, I realized that sure, we might have helped them tell the story, their sustainability story, but nothing had changed in the company. And I had this phrase in my mind that was like, we're just painting deck chairs green on the Titanic. Um, and I just knew there had to be another way. And that was the genesis of a change in lifestyle, a change in life, and the birth of a new company called EdenLab.
Good for you. So that was your transformation moment. So what do you do? What does EdenLab do?
Yeah, so we work with big companies to make them more sustainable, and sustainable companies to make them bigger. Right. So I'm really, really keen. I've set myself, and we've set ourselves a goal to remove and um, reduce 5 million tons of greenhouse gas over the next 5 years, which is, it's not an insubstantial number. It's something like, let's say, 5 million flights from New York to London, say. But how do you achieve that? And it's really like, it's a bit, for me, that's a bit, I was one guy. It's bigger now, there's more of us now, but it was one person to start with. How do you do that? And two ways. One is you work with big organizations that are polluters, and you help them stop doing it and find better ways to do it. Or, and this I think is harder, but possibly where we end up, helping really small enterprises that have, or people that have an exponentially powerful idea for how they might remove carbon from the atmosphere to grow quicker, to get to scale fast. So, but look, at the end of the day, I believe we're all going to face into this challenge one way or another, whether we like it or not, in the coming 5, 10, 20 years. And it will be, to me, it's going to be bigger than digital, which I know sounds crazy, but maybe we can talk about that later. But
I agree. I agree.
And then you have to say, what skills have you got that you can use? And mine happen to be, I'm quite good at thinking strategically and planning, and I'm quite good at being good at changing behavior and shaping aspiration and helping companies innovate over 20 years. So can I repurpose that stuff in a way that might be useful? And that's kind of where we are. So we work with some big companies in some difficult sectors, like household care, detergent, like travel. I mean, travel is a real problem. Like the plane is the elephant in the room when it comes to decarbonizing travel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know that. And but we're also working with food companies, and we work with some smaller firms, and just trying to find ways to help them not go out of business, but sort of switch the way they make their money from, I call it, create a clean share of market. How could you move from, because at the moment you've got a dirty share of market and so do your competition. Yeah. How would you have a clean share? How would you find a way? So I'm trying to draw people through to the future through seeing that they can have a viable business in the future. And my guess, I might be wrong, but my guess is we will work in organizations of people, and we can discuss with you like how they're organized, that's a thing, but that people will probably need jobs and people will probably want to get paid somehow in 10, 20 years time. So how do we use that for good rather than for evil? That's part of that philosophy for me.
So how do you avoid the greenwashing that happened before in the big food, bad American company? Because I talked to somebody in private, not here in the podcast, who is an ESG expert, whatever that's for. And this is a problem with ESG is that there's 1,000 ways of working around that and cheating and greenwashing. And Paul Allard, who I think was the first or the second person we talked to, said, "Oh, what I do is simple. I show him a list of companies that are bullshit, and I show him a list of companies that are good that I've realized that I've identified as yes, when they say they plant a tree, they plant a tree, and when they say they get rid of a cow, they get rid of a cow. So how do you avoid that? Particularly in a big company, which I tend to say big bad company, but
it's really hard. It's really hard, and not least because they're the product of a certain system that we operate in or we live in today. I think we're both interested in changing, and that system is stacked up to operate in a certain way, and they were successful in the system, and the system doesn't necessarily favor doing things the way it's good for the planet or people, really deep down.
Right.
So it's the context, the water in which they swim is kind of challenging. For me personally, and this is going to sound like too human in it. I don't know if that's the right word, but for me, a lot of it comes down to, do you feel that you have trust in the integrity and intention of the person you're dealing with? Because in any group of humans, there are some people on a spectrum from probably evil to angelic. And how do you align yourself with the progressive change agents who have the ability to make influence, that have the ability to drive change, that maybe have a track record of making change happen before, that have energy, that have vision, or prepared to be curious about how the world could be different, and a vested interest in the future helps. I mean, not everyone has that. So often what we're doing, I think, is identifying those sorts of people. And I used to think when I was starting this business, would we work with a certain category or a certain role in a company? And the answer is not necessarily. I think it's with a certain kind of psychological attitude. And then you have to have your wits about you. Some people say we should help fossil fuel companies, the big oil companies, transition. But my personal view is I'm not going to do that for a bunch of reasons, not least of which is I think EdenLab is too small at the moment to make significant difference in what they're doing. Do I think that there are businesses that might be in dirty sectors that one would want to work with and try and help? Then yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because it's also my belief that in 20 years' time, climate breakdown or otherwise, and I'm expecting it to come, I think I'm going to need to probably wash my clothes somehow. So how am I going to get that done? And maybe we'll come up with some amazing technology that solves the problem of carbon in clothes washing, but it's not there yet. Or I'm probably going to need to buy a pair of I don't know what you guys call them in the States. Do you call them underpants? Like your undergarments, your trunks, your shorts. Like, I'm being silly, but kind of not, because like, where is that coming from? We have to get it from somewhere. Maybe we'll knit them ourselves, or you might grow it in the garden. I don't know, but what the future holds. But my view is that we're going to still need some of these basic commodities. So I would rather switch all of us to buying them from people who are doing it in a safe, kind, generous, inclusive way, rather than buying them from some exploitative supply chain that doesn't care about its environment, that's destroying the biodiversity in the production of the product. So,
and eventually,
who knows?
And eventually, that will be a distinction, a differentiator for companies to say, "Hey, we do things the right way, and here's all the data. You know, we're transparent. Here's all the data." That will buy them competitiveness, I guess. And God, I hate that word.
Well, it gives them a right to survive, a right to play, probably in the future, as opposed to getting. I think there's lots of people working in businesses right now that I call them zombie companies, and there may be a financial definition, but my definition is that they're already dead. You just don't know it yet. But they're working in a dead enterprise. Like it won't be around in 10 years' time, because things have changed so much that if you're not playing the game the right way and you're not ahead of the curve and thinking what's coming next, you're kind of out. You're going to be out of business.
Right.
This ESG thing that you mentioned, I mean, we should touch on it. Like, in case anyone doesn't know, it's that environmental, social, and governance kind of way of thinking, and it's really an investment mindset, and it's thinking about handling risk and thinking about risk. I'm sure you know this, and the problem with it is it's scored in 1,000 different ways at the moment, and therefore it's not really clear how can Exxon have at some point had a better score on ESG than Tesla. I mean, you guys will know more about those companies. They're from your part of the world than mine, but that doesn't make sense. And so for me, it's been a useful pressure point in the world, but I think there are other more interesting ones coming that will force much more radical transparency, much more inclusive models of doing business, because we'll be forced to get there. I'm kind of a visionary and prophet of doom in equal, like a utopian and a doomist at the same time, which is a strange place to inhabit, but I think that's a healthy place to be.
No, it's a healthy kind of thing, because we either end up in one or the other. And right now we're heading for the doom side because we're focused on money so much, and that's all that counts. So your gas companies and those kinds of companies, no matter what you say, they're going to go, but we're going to make less money in the next quarter. And I have to report to the board that we're going to make more money next quarter. And that stops all the arguments. And then comes the greenwashing is, can we do something to make it look like, they don't say it that way, but that's the problem. And now my part, what I told you, that we tried to frame it from a radical perspective, where our approach is really simple. Is you start with people, and then you experiment, and then you have co-ownership and co-management on top of that, and you need tools and stuff like that. So a lot of what you were hoping for, a lot of what you're trying to do, strikes me as being in line with that, in the sense that we want to see companies get better. I have no problem with bigger. I have no problem with money, but businesses, and I make a distinction, businesses have to become companies. And the reason I make the distinction is companies come from the Latin compan, and is breaking bread together.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So people that break bread together won't do anything stupid like put shit in their sandwich and hand it to the other guy, because the guy's seeing, which just put scrapping shit. Oh, but it's bigger. It's bigger. Don't you want a bigger sandwich? And And so that's the point that we want to get it to, without going back to, indigenous values or working the land with oxen and stuff like that, because that was part of the problem.
Yeah.
So, but there are ways to do it. We live in the 21st century, but we're treating things as if we're in the Iron Age. And we're not in the Iron Age anymore. We're in the 21st century. We have computers that fit in our pockets, supercomputers. When I started, this is probably like more than 1,000 times what I started with. Okay. And it was a big thing. It was a big crack. So we carry those things in our pockets. They're connected to, we're talking to you in the UK and you wouldn't know it. So let's take advantage of all that to create communities around the world and then create companies that are transparent, complete transparency. And transparency will lead to decentralization. It's my belief.
I'm with you on that. I really think that if I can build on your thought, it's particularly critical in respect to the challenges we face here, because the challenges are systemic.
Yes.
No one company or one person can resolve it. No one component in the value chain has enough influence to really do it. And
yes.
And that's why your point about competition being perhaps an interesting, challenging word in this world is because in a way we have to find ways to. There's that phrase pre-competition. Have you heard of that? So it's where organizations or types of people get together way before they go to market to try and work out how they're going to fix the overall supply chain. But the principle is, unless we collectively try and solve, whether it's where your underpants or your shorts come from, or whether it's how we decide to fuel our villages and cities and our vehicles,
right?
Unless we do it in a companion-like way, I suspect. Yeah, I think we're probably not going to achieve it. It's interesting to me, and I could be more on this than I am. I need to learn more about it, and don't we all? But the really more radical end of the climate activist movement over here in the UK, and they went through quite a big phase of shutting London down and moved on to different tactics now. But one of their main things they're advocating for is a citizens' assembly. I don't know if people talk about the citizens' assembly in the States.
No.
That phrase that's being used. And so what it is this idea that if you got everyone together in the room in a very representative way, then you would have a conversation, an honest conversation about what needs to happen, and you would get to a place where broader systems change could be enabled. But whilst you don't allow that dialogue and discussion and coming together to occur, then you're just constantly doomed to repeating kind of the power systems that currently exist. And there's a lot to be said for it. Although I've also seen, and I've seen it very personally, big groups of people coming together in a democratic way and making some pretty bad decisions, in my point of view, like Brexit. So it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, what was it? Occupy Wall Street or whatever.
Right.
The big criticism was that they didn't have a boss, and I was thinking that's the future, not a bug. But they didn't have. That's it. They didn't have a bug, and they didn't have any alternatives to it. And one of the tools that we make a big deal out of is the RADS mobile app. Again, we carrying this thing, and if I see you making a contribution of any sort, then I recognize the contribution right away. And at the end of the month, those contributions get translated to RADS, which it might be a bad name, but it's all I can think of. And then those RADs become the percentage factor that things get distributed as. So as you get revenue, you are a co-owner, so you are the owner of the revenue, but you don't get all of it. You get only as many as those contributions represented in RADs, and gets distributed one way, and then next month it gets distributed a different way. It's dynamic. It's not static like shares and crap like that. So, well, there's a guess. It will motivate people to contribute more, to contribute things that people will recognize and contribute more. And, I'm sure bad things can come out of it because we're very creative. Human beings are very creative that way. But I can't think of any. I cannot think of any.
I think here's one. It's something to work with rather than a pushback. No, it's not that. But it's like you know how in the Chinese state system it's about who does the scoring, like who works out I'm sure you've done this work, but what is a behavior worth rewarding and what isn't is crucial, isn't it? So actually at the moment in our world, acquisition, making money, driving a big car gets reward is part of a sort of reward system. Status is an unhealthy reward system, perhaps.
Right.
I'm just thinking about the Chinese sort of social controls around behaviors and monitoring the citizens and how that can earn you points or delete you points based on your behavior. And
but we're not talking
how do you prevent that being?
Yeah, we're not talking about control. We're talking about recognition of contributions. Yeah. So here's one. So back up to 1944, but we have phones. Okay, we have these things, and when was the war? Hitler. I don't know. Whenever Hitler started, and everybody started to contribute to recognize contributions for Hitler, because they were really in pain, and you guys had some of the fault in the French, have some of the fault and all that stuff, and we had some of the fault too. But they were really poor, really fucked up, and Hitler was saying wonderful things, like we're gonna not make you poor. What Hitler wasn't saying is that's by taking the wealth and giving it to you, and he would be getting contributions for that. So it's one way to game the system. And it's a way to motivate people to do more like Hitler, because that was well preserved. In the localized economy, in a country where the boundaries are well defined, all that stuff. But this thing is doing away with boundaries. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking to you in the UK. I get friends that I talk to I don't know where he's at today. He travels all over the place. I talked to a guy, Abed, in Dubai. And I know people from all over the world. So I wouldn't do anything with that community that would damage people from their community over there and stuff like that. So it's more of motivating people, giving people a reason to be motivated to do more of the good things. Every time I talk to somebody, or I mentor somebody, or I correct with somebody or I get points, I get contributions. And if I don't, and I'm doing those things, I get to ask, well, I didn't get recognition from anybody. We didn't notice. So you learn to communicate more, and stuff like that. So I think overall, in any case, it's the alternative to fiat, which is because I say so.
Yeah.
There's no more I say so. We decide to go that way, and maybe not so bad or not so good, or we go this way and it's maybe good. But as a group with transparency, people will not pee in their stream that they drink from. And when everybody's peeing in the stream because, oh look, it's mixed yellow, a co-owner will come up and say, that's not such a good idea because I live down the stream and I drink that yellow, and I don't want to drink that yellow, so please stop peeing. And again, because it's one of the communities saying that it's more believable, it's not people scaring, it's not Fox News, it's not, you guys have a similar one in the UK, but I don't know what it is. And it's not an anonymous source of bullshit. It's somebody that you work with, that you break bread with every day. And you tend to gravitate towards the better. My guess.
Yeah.
And,
Help me think something through then, because I like that, and I'm really interested in how we can make it work harder and further and stuff. So one of the challenges that I think we collectively need to get our heads around and live with is, at the moment, people don't pay the real price of the things they buy.
yes.
Right. So no, the company isn't paying for the water it draws out of the ground. It doesn't pass it on to you in price. It doesn't pay for the carbon it's emitting. It passes it on. Doesn't pass on the price of that to you. You don't have to take account of how much you're using or not using. It's kind of, we would like you to sort of spend less carbon and ruin the world less, but hey, there's no control. So or there's no kind of restriction. And we need to move to a space where collectively we all agree that actually, I mean, it's going to happen sooner or later, right? By the way, but it's a question of how we get there, I think.
Yes.
We have to pay the price. Sooner or later, we are going to have to pay somehow the real price of things, and that may mean that you're not taking that long haul flight because it's just you've done your thing this year, and collectively we've agreed that's enough. It's kind of how does one get to that level of transition in it? That's I'm fascinated by. How do you get to that place in a way that feels like we all agreed to do it together, rather than say governments telling their people, right, we're now going to tax you for your carbon, we're now going to price carbon into the food products in the supermarket, in the hypermarket, or whatever.
I should say at this point that I'm Cuban, and I grew up in Cuba, and government is not the solution. Governance is the solution, but government is not, because if Trump had had his way, we would have ended up like Cuba in this place.
Yeah.
So, and then I wouldn't know where to go. And I don't think we're all going to sit down around the table and agree that we're going to have 5 flights a year and 6 flights a year. A committee may say, we should cut on our flights. And somebody will say, no, why should I cut on our flights? Okay. But 90% of that community says, yeah, we should cut on flights. And it'll be more of you pledging 6 flights a year, or 3 flights a year, or 10 flights a year. You pledging that much, not the community agreeing on 6. Oh, because 6 is between 5 and 7, it's a magical number, and all that stuff. So I don't think it'll be a mandate. It'll be more of a pledge for the community to, let's try to stick to 3, and if we do more than 3, then I agree to give some of my rats to a banner. It's another part of the system. So there'll be things like that, and then this community will have overlap with this community, and this community will say, oh, in the previous community we limited the number of flights, and we say, oh no, we get a plane that flies with sunlight, but we can only do 2 flights a year. And then these people will say, oh, we'll do, I pledged 3 over here, I'll do 2 with you, which count for nothing. So I can do 3 and 2, 5. And so there'll be that kind of an organic thing. And that stuff can travel pretty quickly. Again, because of this puppy and the overlap that we have all over the world. I mean, I talk to people from all over the world every day. And I don't fly anymore. I'm down to 1 flight a year or 2, and that's it. And so, and we're planning to go to Europe and do a round thing on trains.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a slightly smaller carbon footprint, but it's better than getting on a plane and all that stuff. So but I think if you mandated, no, you can't do a flight on me, I would say, oh yeah, screw you.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the interesting tension will be like, if you say to someone, I don't know, like a plumber with a truck, right? And you say, you can't you say to the plumber on the truck, you can't fill up your truck with gas this week. You can just see the pushback will be kind of significant. There is this interesting number which I've come across a few times, which is, and I haven't read the actual study, but it says that once 25% of the population is behaving in a certain way, then it's the tipping point. It's the point at which the remainder will come across, and you just need to get to 25%. And I think what's happening in some parts of society now, in both in the States, in Europe, elsewhere, and not everywhere, and not distributed evenly, but is the beginning of subtle shifts like that. Probably more like 15%.
I think I've read the same thing, and 25 is tipping point, but whatever it is, it's exponential. So it'll start here.
Yeah, that's cool.
It'll grow exponential, and some people go to extremes: 1 flight per year, no flights per year. We got to walk everywhere. And some people would go, "Oh, we'll do 10 a year, and you can trade them and stuff like that," and we'll find the middle. So it's not. I don't believe in mandates. I don't believe in mandates at the point of a gun. I don't believe in mandates at the point of a lawsuit or a point of throwing me in jail or anything like that. Appeal to me.
Yeah.
And that'll get you a lot further than telling me what to do, because I'm extraordinary. I'm gonna go, well, screw you. I'm not gonna do that. Why? I don't know, but he said X, and I like white now. So yeah, I don't believe in mandates. So I'm glad that we have the same intentions like you. I believe this will happen one way or the other. It's just we're trying to accelerate it, a little, because the problem is right now we feel the pain. I just read an article that there's been an explosion in pain, in anxiety, and depression.
Yeah.
Now my children, particularly my older child, which is now 40, has been suffering from depression for a long time. It turns out that it was anxiety. And now that they figured out there was anxiety, they give him medication for anxiety. He's totally functional. And to me, it's that younger people post 1972, have been closer to the pain. The economy has been going that ways. Of course, wealth of the few, selected ones that are going that way, but they've had less opportunities and stuff like that. And they can detect, they can sense the fiat system, even though they don't have the name for it. They can sense that it's painful. It's not me. I was full of fiat. I was like, and I am full of fiat in a lot of ways. In that, if something hurt, that's good. Let's make it hurt more, and stuff like that. But not my kids. And my kids are 82, 85. But they feel that pain more readily than I did. And they sense, well, I don't like that pain, but I don't like the pain of not eating. So how do I coordinate? How do I make the two work? And the explosion of anxiety and depression, what we call anxiety and depression, really comes from being closer to the pain, being more compressed into the pain. And when you get really compressed to the pain, what happens is revolution, a bloody revolution. It happened in England centuries ago, and it happened in France at about the time that we had ours, and then we broke away from King George or whatever. And but think of Germany. Germany was compressing, and they had a revolution, and the revolution had a name, Hitler, but it would have been anything else. It would have been taking over generals. It would have been bloody, and it would have been bad for the rest of the world. So these guys are sensing the compression sooner. So it gives me hope that they're not going to end up in bloody revolution, but they're resisting it without knowing what they're resisting. So I got lots of hopes. So I'm being told here to, next week's guest is Preston Gidding. Without the R, it's not Greeting, it's Gidding, co-founder of Packform. And I saw in his LinkedIn that he's in the packaging industry without brick and mortar, meaning without a warehouse, and without top-down management. So I'm really curious to see what this guy is doing and stuff like that. So anyways, thank you, Leo Rayman, for your time and
my pleasure
to this session. Yes. I'll send you an email inviting you to a group of people that have been guests on this podcast, and really is for meeting each other. It's not for me to sell anything. It's for meeting each other and see what we can do, because you guys are addressing pieces of the puzzle, and how come we bring them together and make a bigger thing? And for a long time, I thought that we need examples of radical companies and stuff like that. And the answer is no, we don't need examples of that. We need examples of, this is happening over there, that is happening over there, that, and build an organic
a whole
movement that way.
More holistic. It's cool. I like it.
So thank you very much. And I think we're going to have our Carlos, we're going to have our going away film thing.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Matt.